The Manhattan skyline glittered like shattered diamonds against the evening sky. 58 floors above the concrete jungle, James Blackwood stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of the conference room, his reflection superimposed over the city he had conquered decades ago. His silver hair caught the light from the crystal chandeliers, his tailored charcoal suit a second skin. Behind him, the boardroom had emptied, the leather chairs still warm from the bodies of his executives who had filed out moments ago after another successful quarterly meeting. The company value had increased by 17%. The Asian markets were expanding. The European division had exceeded projections. James should have felt something. Pride, perhaps. Satisfaction, at least. Instead, he felt nothing but the weight of his empty calendar for the evening ahead. His phone vibrated against the polished mahogany table. He glanced at the screen, expecting his assistant reminding him about tomorrow's agenda. Instead, the name made his chest tighten. Michael Blackwood, his older brother. The only person who remembered what James had been before he became who he was. Michael, he answered, his voice betraying nothing. The voice on the other end belonged to a woman he didn't recognize. She spoke with the practiced gentleness of someone accustomed to delivering bad news. Hospital. Massive heart attack. Too late. Sorry for your loss. James thanked her mechanically, ended the call, and placed the phone face down on the table. The Manhattan lights continued their cold sparkle, indifferent to the fact that James Blackwood was now truly alone in the world. In the elevator's mirrored walls, James saw the reflection of a stranger. A man who had everything and nothing. He had built Blackwood Investments from the ground up, transformed it from a small firm into a financial powerhouse that controlled billions. But Michael had been his final tether to a world before spreadsheets and acquisitions, before penthouses and private jets. The marble lobby echoed with his footsteps. His driver would be waiting outside, but James waved him off with a text message. Tonight he needed to walk, to feel something beyond the numbness that had settled into his bones. The November air bit through his cashmere coat as he stepped onto the sidewalk. The city moved around him in its perpetual rush. Yellow cabs honking, pedestrians with their faces illuminated by phone screens, street vendors packing up for the night. None of them knew that James Blackwood had just lost his final anchor to humanity, and if they did, none would care. He walked without destination, his mind replaying fragments of his last conversation with Michael 3 weeks ago. His brother had sounded tired, but had brushed off James's concerns. "Just getting old, Jimmy," he had said, using the childhood nickname nobody else would dare utter. "Not all of us have your superhuman stamina." James passed a small park where a father pushed his daughter on a swing, her laughter cutting through the city noise like silver bells. He looked away. That path, family, children, legacy beyond wealth, had been closed to him long ago. His marriage had dissolved after 5 childless years, his ex-wife claiming she had married a man but found herself living with a corporation. Perhaps she had been right. Lost in thought, James almost didn't register the impact. Someone, collided with his side, small but forceful enough to break his stride. His hand instinctively reached for his inside pocket, where his wallet should have been. Empty. "Hey!" The word escaped his lips as his eyes found the culprit, a small figure darting through the crowd, weaving between pedestrians with practiced ease. A child. A girl with a tangled mess of brown hair, wearing clothes too thin for the November chill. In that split second, James had made a decision that would alter the trajectory of his life. Instead of calling out for police or letting it go as an expensive lesson, he followed. His long legs ate the distance between them as he pursued the child through the crowded sidewalk. The girl glanced back once, her eyes widening when she realized she was being followed. She ducked into an alley, her small frame nimble where James's larger one had to maneuver. "Stop!" he called out, but the word only made her run faster. The chase led them deeper into the city, away from the gleaming skyscrapers and into neighborhoods where the buildings grew shorter and more weathered with each block. Something about the streets tugged at James's memory. The corner bodega, the laundromat with its flickering sign. He had known these streets once, before he had clawed his way out. The girl turned another corner, and James followed, his breath now coming in visible puffs in the cold air. The neighborhood continued its decline. Graffiti-covered walls, Security gates pulled down over storefronts. Groups of men huddled around barrel fires. Then, in a narrow alley between two brick buildings, the chase ended. A chain-link fence blocked the path, too high to climb quickly. The girl spun around, cornered, her chest heaving, her eyes wide with fear. James stopped 10 feet away. His own breathing labored more from the rush of adrenaline than physical exertion. Under the harsh glow of a single security light, he could see her clearly now. 8, maybe 9 years old. Thin, but not emaciated. Her jacket was worn at the elbows, her jeans patched at one knee. Her face was smudged with city grime, but there was a defiance in her eyes that struck him. "Give me back my wallet," he said, keeping his voice level. The girl clutched something to her chest, his sleek leather wallet, the one his executive team had given him last Christmas, with his initials embossed in gold. She didn't speak, but her eyes darted past him, calculating escape routes. "You know I can call the police," James continued, taking out his phone to emphasize the point. "Theft is a serious offense." Something flickered across her face. Not fear of the police, but something deeper, more desperate. "I just needed money," she finally said, her voice smaller than he expected but steady. "For medicine." James had heard every sob story in the book. In his position, people were always trying to sell him something, convince him of some tragedy that only his money could solve. He had developed an immunity to manipulation. Yet something in her direct gaze held no artifice, no practiced plea, just raw necessity. "Medicine for who?" he asked, softening his tone slightly. "My mom," the girl answered. "She's really sick. She needs her heart pills. The pharmacy won't give them without money." Her voice cracked on the last word, but she quickly composed herself. James took another step forward, and she tensed but didn't run. "What's your name?" he asked. A moment of hesitation. "Lily," she finally said. "Well, Lily, I'm James." He extended his hand, palm up. "I need my wallet back." She looked at the wallet, then at him, a battle playing out behind her eyes. Finally, she extended it toward him, but didn't move closer. James had to cross the remaining distance between them to take it. As his fingers closed around the leather, he noticed her hands, small but rough, with a small burn scar across the right palm. Not the hands of a child who was cared for properly. He opened the wallet and checked its contents. Credit cards present, eyed intact. Even the key, several $100s untouched. But something was missing. The photograph. The only picture he carried of his parents, taken the summer before their death. His mother's smile. His father's proud stance with one hand on young James's shoulder. "There was a photograph," he said, looking up sharply. Lily flinched at his tone, but reached into her pocket and produced the slightly bent photograph. "I wasn't going to keep it," she said quietly. You looked happy." The simple observation struck James like a physical blow. He had been happy then, hadn't he? Before life had hardened him, before success had isolated him. He took the photograph gently, looking at it for a moment before returning it to his wallet. When he looked up, Lily was watching him with an expression that seemed too knowing for her years. "Show me," he said suddenly. "What?" Confusion crossed her face. "Show me your mother. Prove to me she's sick and needs medicine." Lily's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Why do you care?" "I don't," James said automatically and then paused. "But I want to know if you're telling the truth." She studied him for a long moment, weighing her options. Then with a small nod, she turned toward the chain-link fence. "This way. There's a hole we can get through." James followed her through a gap in the fence that would have been invisible to him. They walked in silence through back alleys and narrow streets, deeper into a neighborhood that had once been familiar to James. 35 years ago, he had lived only blocks from here, in an apartment not much bigger than a storage unit, working nights to put himself through community college. They stopped in front of a dilapidated apartment building. The brick facade was crumbling, the front steps cracked. A group of teenagers loitered at the entrance, smoking and passing a bottle in a paper bag. They eyed James's expensive coat with undisguised interest. Lily seemed to shrink as they approached, making herself smaller, less noticeable. The teenagers parted to let them pass, but James felt their eyes following him into the building. Inside, the hallway smelled of mildew and something cooking with too much garlic. The elevator had an out-of-order sign that looked permanent. 6 flights up, Lily said, heading for the stairs. The stairwell was dimly lit, with graffiti covering most available surfaces. James followed Lily's small form up the concrete steps, noticing how she automatically avoided certain spots where the steps had crumbled away. On the 6th floor, Lily led him to apartment 6C. The door had 3 locks, and she produced a key from around her neck to open them one by one. The care she took reminded James that this was no ordinary 8-year-old. This was a child who had been forced to grow up too quickly. The apartment was small but surprisingly neat. A studio with a kitchenette in one corner, a folding screen partially hiding what must be the bed area, and a small living space with a worn couch and a bookshelf made of cinder blocks and wooden planks. The place was cold. James could see his breath, but clean. No dishes in the sink, no clothes on the floor. "Mom," Lily called out, her voice changing, softening with concern. "I'm back." She moved toward the screened-off area, and James followed, hanging back at a respectful distance. Behind the screen was a twin bed, and on it lay a woman who couldn't be more than 35. Though illness had aged her prematurely, her skin had an unhealthy pallor, her breathing shallow and labored. Her eyes were closed, and she didn't respond to Lily's voice. "Mom?" Lily's voice rose in panic. She touched her mother's forehead. "She's burning up. She wasn't this hot when I left." James moved forward now, professionalism overriding hesitation. He placed 2 fingers against the woman's neck, feeling for a pulse. It was there, but rapid and thready. Her skin was indeed burning with fever. "How long has she been like this?" he asked, already reaching for his phone. "She got really sick yesterday," Lily said, her composure cracking. "She couldn't go to work. She said she just needed her medicine and rest, but we ran out of pills 3 days ago, and the pharmacy wouldn't—" Her voice broke. James was already dialing, not 911, but a private number. "Dr. Patel," he said when the call connected. "It's James Blackwood. I need your team at an address in the Lower East Side. Medical emergency." He gave the address, then listened. Heart condition, high fever, semi-conscious woman in her 30s. "Yes, full workup, private room. I'll handle the paperwork later." He ended the call and turned to Lily, who was staring at him with a mixture of hope and disbelief. "My personal physician and his team will be here in 10 minutes, James explained. "They'll take your mother to Manhattan Memorial. She'll get the best care available." "We can't afford—" Lily began. "I can," James cut her off. Then, seeing her expression, he softened his tone. "What's your mother's name?" "Sarah," Lily answered. "Sarah Reynolds." James nodded and moved to the kitchenette, opening cabinets until he found a clean glass. He filled it with water and returned to the bedside, helping lift Sarah's head gently to get some liquid into her. Her lips were cracked from dehydration, and she swallowed reflexively, but didn't wake. On the nightstand, James noticed a pill bottle and picked it up. The prescription was for a heart medication he recognized as expensive and specialized, the kind insurance companies fought to avoid covering. The bottle was empty, the label indicating it should have lasted another week. Next to it was a stack of medical papers, bills with red past due stamps, insurance denial letters, a payment plan from the hospital with most of the payments marked missed. "She works 3 jobs, Lily said quietly, noticing his attention on the papers. "But she got too sick to go this week, and our insurance got canceled because she missed payments." James said nothing, but something cold and hard in his chest began to crack. He recognized the desperate mathematics of poverty, the cruel calculations of which bill to pay, which necessity to sacrifice. His own mother had died of an infection that a simple course of antibiotics could have cured, but they hadn't had the money for a doctor visit. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Lily ran to answer it, and James heard multiple voices in the hallway. Dr. Patel entered first, a distinguished Indian man in his 60s who had been James's physician for over a decade. Behind him came 2 paramedics with a stretcher and equipment bags. Dr. Patel nodded a greeting to James before immediately moving to Sarah's bedside, his manner efficient and professional. The paramedics began setting up equipment, taking vital signs, and starting an IV. "Severe dehydration," Dr. Patel announced after a brief examination. "Possible pneumonia complicating what appears to be existing heart failure. We need to get her to the hospital immediately." Lily hovered at the foot of the bed, her small face tight with worry. James moved to stand beside her, awkward but feeling a strange responsibility he couldn't name. "Is my mom going to die?" Lily asked, her voice barely audible. Dr. Patel glanced at her, his expression softening. "Not if I can help it, young lady. We're going to take very good care of her." The paramedics transferred Sarah to the stretcher, attaching portable monitoring equipment and an oxygen mask. As they prepared to move her, Lily grabbed a worn stuffed rabbit from the bed and tucked it beside her mother. "So she knows I'm with her," she explained when she caught James watching. The group made their way down the 6 flights, the paramedics expertly maneuvering the stretcher down the narrow stairwell. Outside, an unmarked private ambulance waited. The teenagers who had been loitering earlier watched with curious eyes as Sarah was loaded inside. "I need to go with her," Lily said, moving toward the ambulance. "Of course," James nodded. "I'll follow in my car." As Dr. Patel climbed in beside the stretcher, James made another call, summoning his driver. While they waited, he noticed Lily shivering in her thin jacket, the November night growing colder by the minute. Without a word, he removed his cashmere coat and draped it over her shoulders. It engulfed her small frame, pulling around her feet, but she clutched it gratefully. "Thank you," she said, her voice small but sincere, "for helping us." Before James could respond, 2 police officers approached from a cruiser that had pulled up beside the ambulance. One was young, probably new to the force, the other older, with the weathered look of a veteran. "Mr. Blackwood?" the older officer asked, his expression neutral but eyes sharp. James tensed. "Yes?" "We received a report about a stolen wallet in Midtown," the officer continued. "The description of the suspect matches this young lady." He nodded toward Lily, who had gone very still beside James. "The security cameras." Of course. In his position, James had insisted on top-tier security around all his properties. The cameras outside his building would have captured the moment Lily bumped into him, and his security team would have automatically reported the incident. "There must be some mistake," James said smoothly. "My wallet wasn't stolen." The younger officer frowned. "Sir, we have footage of this girl picking your pocket outside the Blackwood Tower approximately 90 minutes ago." Lily began to tremble beside him, and James felt something protective rise within him, a sensation so unfamiliar he almost didn't recognize it. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," he said firmly. "This is Lily Reynolds, the daughter of a friend. We were playing a game. She was practicing sleight of hand for a school talent show. I was helping her rehearse." The officers exchanged skeptical glances. The older one pulled out a tablet and tapped the screen a few times before turning it toward James. The security footage was crystal clear, Lily expertly lifting his wallet as she bumped into him on the sidewalk. "That's quite a talented young lady," the officer commented dryly. "But we also have a record of previous incidents. Shoplifting from a bodega 3 months ago, another pickpocketing attempt at Grand Central last month." James felt Lily shrink further into his coat, her eyes fixed on the ground. "Officer," James said, lowering his voice and stepping closer to the men, "as you can see, we're dealing with a medical emergency. This child's mother is critically ill. Whatever happened earlier, I assure you, I have no interest in pressing charges. In fact, I'm personally handling their situation now." The younger officer that looked ready to protest, but the veteran studied James's face for a long moment before giving a slight nod. "We'll still need to file a report," he said, "and Children's Services may need to be notified if the mother is hospitalized long-term." A cold knot formed in James's stomach. He knew what that meant. Lily would be put into the system. Foster care, the same system he had narrowly avoided as a child when his parents died, saved only by his brother Michael taking custody despite being barely an adult himself. "I'll be acting as Lily's temporary guardian," James heard himself say with a confidence he didn't entirely feel. "I have the resources to ensure she's properly cared for while her mother recovers." The officers looked skeptical. "Sir, there are procedures." "I understand," James interrupted, his voice taking on the same tone he used in boardroom negotiations. "And I respect your duty to follow protocol. However, separating this child from her only family connection during a medical crisis seems unnecessarily traumatic. My legal team will be handling all the proper paperwork first thing in the morning." He reached into his suit jacket, pulled out a business card, and handed it to the senior officer. "My direct line is on the back. Please call me personally if there are any questions or concerns." The weight of the Blackwood name did what it always did: opened doors, removed obstacles. The officers retreated after taking down basic information, promising to follow up, but making no move to separate Lily from James. As they walked away, James's town car pulled up alongside the ambulance. The driver stepped out, his expression betraying momentary surprise at seeing his employer standing on a sidewalk in the Lower East Side without his coat, next to a small girl drowning in cashmere. "Hospital, sir?" the driver asked, recovering quickly. "Manhattan Memorial," James confirmed. "We'll follow the ambulance." Inside the luxurious vehicle, Lily sat perched on the edge of the leather seat, still wrapped in James's coat. The contrast between her and her surroundings was stark. This child from a world of broken heating and past due notices, now surrounded by the trappings of extreme wealth. "Why did you lie to those policemen?" she asked suddenly as the car pulled away from the curb. James considered the question. "It wasn't entirely a lie. I am going to help you and your mother." "But why?" Lily persisted, her young face serious in the passing streetlights. "You don't know us. I stole from you." "And returned everything," James pointed out. He paused, uncertain how to explain something he didn't fully understand himself. Sometimes people need help. Sometimes they're in a position to give it. Lily seemed to accept this, falling silent as she watched the city transform outside the window. The buildings grew taller, the streets cleaner, the people better dressed as they moved from her neighborhood to the upper-class medical district. Manhattan Memorial Hospital's private wing had a separate entrance, discreetly marked and staffed by professionals who recognized James immediately. Sarah was already being wheeled through corridors of gleaming tile and soft lighting, Dr. Patel walking alongside, issuing orders to a team of specialists who had materialized at his call. James guided Lily through the organized chaos of the emergency intake, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. They followed the stretcher until a gentle-faced nurse stopped them at the entrance to a treatment area. "They need to stabilize her first," the nurse explained, kneeling to Lily's level. "As soon as the doctors have her comfortable, you can see her. I promise." Lily nodded, her face pale but composed. The nurse led them to a private waiting area, not the standard room with uncomfortable chairs and old magazines, but a tastefully decorated space with soft couches and a small kitchenette. "Can I get you anything?" the nurse asked. "Something to eat or drink?" James realized it was well past dinner time, and Lily had likely not eaten. "Could you bring some food for Lily? Whatever's available from the cafe." After the nurse left, Lily finally shed James's coat, carefully folding the expensive garment before handing it back to him. Underneath, her own jacket looked even more worn by comparison. "You don't have to stay," she said, not meeting his eyes. "They'll take care of Mom now because of you. You can go home." James shrugged back into his coat, feeling the lingering warmth where it had wrapped around the child. He should leave, call his assistant to handle the paperwork, make a donation to cover all medical expenses, return to his ordered, empty life. Instead, he sat down on the couch across from Lily. "I think I'll stay a while," he said, "at least until we hear from the doctor." Lily looked up, studying his face as if searching for deception. Finding none, she gave a small nod and settled into her seat, her legs dangling above the floor, swinging slightly with nervous energy. The nurse returned with a tray of food, a sandwich, apple slices, a carton of milk, and cookies. Lily's eyes widened at the spread, but she hesitated, looking to James as if for permission. "Go ahead," he encouraged. "You need to keep your strength up." She ate carefully, with the deliberate movements of someone accustomed to making food last. James found himself wondering when her last meal had been, and what it had consisted of. The thought stirred something uncomfortable in his chest. Dr. Patel entered the waiting area an hour later, his face serious but not grave. He nodded a greeting to James before sitting beside Lily. "Your mother is very sick," he said gently, "but she's stable for now. We've got her on medication to help her heart and antibiotics for the infection in her lungs." "Is she going to be okay?" Lily asked, her voice small. Dr. Patel hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "The next 48 hours will be critical. Her heart is very weak, and the infection has put extra strain on it, but she's fighting hard." He glanced at James, a silent communication passing between them. The situation was worse than he was letting on. "Can I see her?" Lily asked. She's sleeping now, but yes, for a few minutes, Dr. Patel agreed. Then I think you should get some rest too. As they followed Dr. Patel to the ICU, James pulled the doctor aside, speaking in a low voice while Lily walked slightly ahead. What aren't you telling us? Dr. Patel sighed. She's in heart failure, James. The damage is extensive and likely chronic. She needs specialized medication, possibly surgery. Without it, he left the sentence unfinished. Whatever she needs, James said firmly. Cost is not an issue. Dr. Patel nodded, unsurprised by the response. There's a complication. The most effective medication for her condition is still in clinical trials in Sweden. It's not FDA approved yet. James processed this information with the same rapid assessment he applied to business problems. How quickly can we get it? James, Dr. Patel cautioned, we're talking about experimental treatment. The legal implications. How quickly? James repeated, his tone making it clear he wasn't interested in obstacles. Dr. Patel sighed. With the right connections, 48 hours minimum. But that's assuming we can cut through significant red tape. Consider it done, James said. Make the calls. Use my name wherever necessary. They had reached the ICU. Through the glass partition, Sarah Reynolds lay surrounded by machines, tubes and wires, a technological cocoon trying to keep death at bay. She looked even smaller and more fragile under the harsh hospital lights, her skin nearly as white as the sheets. Lily pressed her hand against the glass, her face a mask of worry well beyond her years. A nurse in blue scrubs approached, gently explaining the equipment in the visiting protocol before leading Lily inside. James watched as the child approached the bed cautiously, reaching out to touch her mother's hand with heartbreaking gentleness. His phone vibrated. The caller ID showed Richard Morris, his CFO and the man who had been angling for James's position for years. Blackwood, he answered tersely. James, where the hell are you? Morris's voice was sharp with barely concealed frustration. The Japanese investors have been calling. They're concerned about the Singapore acquisition, and I've been telling them you'll personally address their concerns. Something urgent came up, James replied. Family matter. A pause. Family? I thought your brother... I'll call them tomorrow. James cut him off. First thing. James, these people are 14 hours ahead of us. Their tomorrow is already happening. They're waiting for reassurance from you personally before the markets open. Through the glass, James watched as Lily whispered something to her unconscious mother, her small hand clutching the larger one with all the desperate hope of childhood. They'll have to wait, he said, making a decision that would have been unthinkable 12 hours earlier. This can't be delegated. He ended the call before Morris could protest further, silencing the phone entirely. Whatever corporate fires needed fighting would have to burn a little longer. For the first time in decades, something else took precedence. The nurse emerged from the ICU with Lily, explaining that they needed to let Sarah rest. The child looked exhausted now, the adrenaline of the crisis finally wearing off, leaving dark shadows under her eyes. We should find you somewhere to sleep, James said, realizing he hadn't thought through the logistics of his impulsive guardianship claim. I can stay here, Lily said quickly. I don't mind the chairs. James shook his head. The hospital has private rooms for families of patients. Dr. Patel will arrange one. He hesitated, then added, I'll stay too, in case there's any news about your mother during the night. Relief washed over Lily's face. Thank you, she said simply. As they walked toward the family accommodation wing, a commotion at the nurses' station caught their attention. 2 more police officers had arrived, and with them, a woman in a severe gray suit holding a clipboard, the unmistakable look of a social worker. Mr. Blackwood, she called, spotting him. I'm Karen Winters from Child Protective Services. We need to discuss Lily Reynolds' placement while her mother is hospitalized. Lily's hand shot out, grabbing James's sleeve with surprising strength, her eyes wide with fear. He looked down at those small fingers clutching the expensive fabric of his suit, and in that moment, James Blackwood, who had built an empire by always making the rational choice, made a decision from somewhere deeper than reason. There's been a misunderstanding, he said, his voice carrying the authority of a man accustomed to being obeyed. I've already established myself as Lily's temporary guardian. My legal team will provide all necessary documentation in the morning. Sir, the social worker said, her expression professional but firm, There are protocols. Without an existing relationship to the child or prior legal arrangements, we need to place her in emergency foster care until— Ms. Winters, James interrupted, stepping forward slightly. Lily has experienced enough trauma tonight. Her mother is fighting for her life. The last thing she needs is to be placed with strangers. The law requires that the child's best interest be paramount, James countered. I have the resources to ensure she receives proper care while remaining close to her mother. I'm prepared to sign whatever temporary custody forms are required. The standoff stretched for several tense seconds. James was acutely aware of Lily's presence beside him, of her fingers still clutching his sleeve as if he were a lifeline in a storm. He had never fought for anyone but himself before. The sensation was foreign but not unpleasant. We'll need to conduct a home evaluation, the social worker finally said, her tone making it clear she was making a significant concession. Of course, James agreed. My residence is available for inspection at your convenience. More forms, more signatures. James provided his address, the penthouse apartment that occupied the top 2 floors of a building he owned on the Upper East Side. The social worker's eyebrows rose slightly as she noted it down, but she made no comment. Finally, it was agreed that Lily could remain in James's temporary custody pending further evaluation. The social worker left with a promise to follow up the next day, and the police officers departed with her. In the family room, Lily finally released her death grip on James's sleeve. The room was comfortable if impersonal. 2 beds, a small sitting area, a private bathroom, hospital-grade luxury. They were going to take me away, she said, her voice barely audible. Yes, James acknowledged, seeing no point in sugarcoating the reality. But you stopped them. It wasn't a question, but her tone held wonder. James knelt down to her level, meeting her eyes directly. Lily, I made a promise to help you and your mother. I intend to keep it. Tears welled in the child's eyes, but she blinked them back fiercely. It was the same question she had asked earlier, but now it carried more weight. Why would a billionaire CEO involve himself in the lives of a struggling, single mother and her daughter? Why upend his carefully ordered existence? Why fight the system for strangers? James thought of his brother, Michael, gone now, to whatever lay beyond this life. He thought of his parents, whose faces were preserved only in the photograph Lily had almost kept because they looked happy. He thought of the empty penthouse waiting for him, filled with expensive things that brought no joy. Because sometimes, he said slowly, finding the words as he spoke them, the most important investments have nothing to do with money. Lily studied his face with that disconcerting intensity children sometimes possess. Whatever she was looking for, she seemed to find it, because she nodded once, accepting his answer. You should get some sleep, James said, straightening up. Tomorrow will be a long day. As Lily readied herself for bed, using a toothbrush and pajamas provided by the hospital, James stepped into the hallway to make several calls. First to his personal attorney, who would handle the temporary guardianship paperwork, then to his executive assistant, rearranging his schedule for the next several days. Finally to his housekeeper, instructing her to prepare the guest room in his penthouse. When he returned to the room, Lily was already in one of the beds, looking small against the white sheets. She wasn't asleep, her eyes open and watchful. Will you stay until I fall asleep? She asked, her voice betraying her age for the first time that night. Yes, James promised, settling into the chair beside her bed. I'll be right here. As Lily's breathing gradually deepened into sleep, James Blackwood found himself in uncharted territory. He had spent decades building walls around himself, constructing a life where he answered to no one and needed no one. Now, in the space of one evening, a child with desperate eyes had somehow breached those fortifications. Outside the window, Manhattan continued its restless pulse. In boardrooms across the city, deals were being made, fortunes won and lost. None of it seemed to matter as much as the sound of a child's steady breathing and the promise he had made to be there when she woke. Morning arrived at Manhattan Memorial with the sterile efficiency that defined luxury healthcare. James woke in the chair beside Lily's bed, his neck stiff, his thoughts immediately organizing themselves around the day ahead. The child still slept, curled into a protective ball beneath hospital blankets, her face relaxed in a way it hadn't been during her waking hours. James checked his phone. 27 missed calls, 42 urgent emails. The world of Blackwood investments demanding his return to normalcy. He stepped quietly into the hallway, straightening his rumpled suit as best he could. The ICU nurse recognized him immediately. Mr. Blackwood, Dr. Patel left instructions to update you as soon as you were awake. Ms. Reynolds made it through the night, but her condition remains critical. He's scheduled additional tests this morning. Where is he now? Consulting with the cardiac team. He asked if you could join them in conference room B when you're available. James nodded, glancing back at Lily's door. The girl is still sleeping. Could someone sit with her? I don't want her to wake up alone. The nurse's expression softened. Of course, I'll arrange it. Conference room B housed a gathering of serious faces around a polished table. Dr. Patel stood at the head, digital scans displayed on the wall behind him. He nodded as James entered, continuing his presentation without pause. The cardiac damage is extensive. The mitral valve shows significant regurgitation, and the left ventricle is severely weakened. We're looking at class 4 heart failure. An older woman with steel gray hair interrupted. Even with the current protocol, her prognosis is poor. 6 months, maybe 12 with aggressive management. James absorbed this information with the same focused clarity he applied to market forecasts. You mentioned an experimental treatment in Sweden. Dr. Patel nodded. The Stellaris protocol. It's shown remarkable results in similar cases, but it's only available through Norberg Pharmaceuticals in Stockholm. It's still in final clinical trials, not yet submitted for FDA approval, which means importing it would be legally complex, supplied another doctor, his tone cautious, and expensive, even if we could clear the regulatory hurdles. James straightened his shoulders. Consider those hurdles cleared. What else do we need? The cardiac team exchanged glances. Dr. Patel cleared his throat. James, I understand your desire to help, but we're talking about significant obstacles. International pharmaceutical regulations, FDA restrictions on unapproved treatments, potential liability issues for the hospital. Can it save her life? James interrupted. A moment of silence. Then the woman with gray hair spoke. Based on the published data for a patient with Ms. Reynolds' profile, yes, it could potentially add years, not months, possibly even achieve partial reversal of the damage. Then make it happen, James said with the same tone that had closed billion-dollar deals. Whatever resources you need, whatever connections, whatever it costs. Dr. Patel sighed. We'll also need to consider surgical options. The medication alone won't be enough without addressing the structural damage. A heart transplant? James asked. Ideally, yes, said another specialist. But the waiting list is years long, and with her current condition, she wouldn't qualify for priority placement. James felt something hardening within him. Not the cold calculation of business, but a different kind of resolve. What if the operation were done privately? What if we found a compatible donor heart through other channels? The room fell silent. Dr. Patel's expression grew concerned. James, there are ethical and legal considerations. I'm not suggesting anything illegal, James clarified. I'm talking about leveraging every legitimate connection at our disposal. Private donor registries, international options, research facilities, places where bureaucracy doesn't override humanity. The medical team looked skeptical, but didn't dismiss the idea outright. They understood that James Blackwood's sphere of influence extended into realms most people couldn't access. Time is our enemy here, the female cardiologist noted. Even with the Swedish medication, we're looking at critical deterioration within days, not weeks. Then we have 48 hours, James concluded. I'll handle the medication. You prepare for whatever surgical intervention will be necessary once we have it. As the meeting adjourned, Dr. Patel held James back. This isn't a corporate takeover, old friend. Some things even your resources can't guarantee. James met his gaze directly. Michael died yesterday. Dr. Patel's expression softened with genuine sympathy. James, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. The last of my family, and now for reasons I can't fully explain, I find myself responsible for a child who will lose her mother without our intervention. James straightened his tie, a gesture of composure more than necessity. I couldn't save Michael. Perhaps I can save Sarah. Dr. Patel placed a hand on his shoulder, one of the few people who could approach James with such familiarity. Just be prepared for the possibility that some battles can't be won, no matter how much power you wield. James nodded, acknowledging the warning without accepting its premise. Throughout his life, he had repeatedly proven that sufficient resources, properly applied, could overcome virtually any obstacle. This would be no different. He returned to find Lily awake, sitting cross-legged on the bed while a kind-faced volunteer read from a children's book. The girl's face brightened when she saw him, then immediately shadowed with concern. "Is my mom okay?" James sat on the edge of the bed. "She made it through the night. The doctors are doing everything they can. But she's not better yet." "No," James answered honestly. "Her heart is very weak, but we're bringing in special medicine that might help." Lily's fingers twisted in the blanket. "We tried to get her medicine before, but it was too expensive, and the insurance people said they wouldn't pay because it was a pre-existing condition." The clinical term sounded strange in her young voice. James felt a flare of anger at a system that forced children to understand such concepts. "This is different. This medicine is so special, it isn't even available in this country yet. But I'm going to get it." Lily studied his face. "How?" "I know people who can help. That's what I do. I find solutions to difficult problems." She nodded, accepting this with the strange trust children sometimes grant adults who have not yet disappointed them. "Can I see her today?" "Yes, but first we both need breakfast and perhaps some clean clothes." James gestured to his rumpled suit from yesterday. "I've arranged for someone to bring things for both of us." As if on cue, the door opened to admit a tall woman with impeccable posture, carrying several shopping bags. Helen had been James's household manager for 15 years, running his domestic life with the same precision he applied to his business empire. "Mr. Blackwood," she acknowledged, then turned to Lily with a warm smile that softened her efficient demeanor. "And you must be Miss Reynolds. I've brought some things that might fit you." Lily's eyes widened at the bags from high-end children's boutiques. Helen unpacked them with practiced efficiency. Jeans, t-shirts, sweaters, a warm coat, pajamas, underwear, socks, sneakers, toiletries, even a small backpack. All new, all expensive, all precisely her size. "How did you know what would fit?" Lily asked, running a hesitant finger over the soft fabric of a purple sweater. Helen smiled. "Mr. Blackwood provided your approximate size. I've raised 3 children of my own, so I have some experience." Lily looked overwhelmed by the bounty spread across the bed. "This is too much." "It's necessary," James said simply. "You need proper clothes." While Lily went to shower and change, Helen handed James a garment bag containing a fresh suit, shirt, tie, and toiletries. Her expression remained professionally neutral, but he knew her well enough to recognize the questions behind her composure. "Thank you, Helen. I'll need you to prepare the guest room at the penthouse, the blue one with the adjoining sitting area, and perhaps order some age-appropriate books and activities." "Of course, sir. Will Miss Reynolds be staying with us for some time?" "Indefinitely," James replied, "at least until her mother recovers. Child Protective Services will be conducting a home evaluation, so please ensure everything is in order." Helen's eyebrows rose slightly, the most surprise she ever displayed. "I see. Is there anything specific the young lady enjoys? Food preferences? Allergies?" James realized he knew almost nothing about Lily beyond her desperate circumstances. "I'll find out. For now, just ensure the basics are covered." Helen nodded and departed with the efficient grace that characterized her service. James took his own garment bag to the adjoining bathroom, grateful for the chance to shower and change. As hot water washed away the physical discomforts of his unusual night, his mind worked on multiple fronts, securing the Swedish medication, arranging temporary guardianship, managing the inevitable corporate fallout from his absence. When he emerged, Lily was waiting, transformed by her new clothes. The purple sweater and new jeans made her look like any other well-cared-for child, though her solemn expression remained that of someone who had seen too much, too young. "Everything fit okay?" he asked. She nodded. "Thank you. I've never had new clothes before, just from the thrift store or the church donation box." The simple statement hit James with unexpected force. He thought of his own closet filled with custom-made suits, each costing more than Sarah Reynolds likely earned in a month. The disparity felt obscene in a way it never had when viewed through spreadsheets and economic theories. "You look very nice," he said, feeling oddly inadequate in his response. After breakfast in the hospital's private dining area, they visited Sarah in the ICU. Her condition remained unchanged, unconscious, dependent on machines, her body fighting a battle it was ill-equipped to win. Lily approached the bed with the careful movements of someone who understood the fragility of the situation, touching her mother's hand with gentle fingers. "Hi, Mom," she said softly. "I'm here. Mr. Blackwood is helping us. You just need to get better, okay?" James stood back, giving her space for this private moment while remaining present. He watched as she spoke to her mother, telling her about the new clothes, promising to do her schoolwork while Sarah was sick, maintaining a one-sided conversation as if, through sheer determination, she could pull her mother back from the brink. His phone vibrated. Richard Morris again. James stepped into the hallway to take the call. "This better be important, Richard. I left clear instructions about handling the Singapore acquisition." "The board has called an emergency meeting," Morris replied, not bothering to hide his satisfaction. "They're concerned about your sudden absence, especially with the Japanese investors threatening to withdraw." James felt a familiar cold anger rising. "Schedule it for 2 p.m. I'll attend virtually." "They've specifically requested your physical presence, James. Several members have expressed concern about your judgment." The threat was thinly veiled. Morris had been positioning himself as James's successor for years, waiting for any misstep. Now he believed he had found one. "Tell the board I'm dealing with a personal emergency. I'll join virtually or they can reschedule." "Personal emergency?" Morris's voice dripped with skepticism. "You've canceled meetings with billionaires to babysit some street kid?" "The board will find that interesting." James's grip tightened on the phone. "Careful, Richard. You're overplaying your hand." "Am I? Security footage of you chasing a known juvenile delinquent through Lower Manhattan is already circulating among certain board members. As CFO, I'm concerned about potential liability issues." "What exactly is your relationship with this child and her mother?" The implications in Morris's tone were clear and despicable. James felt something snap within him, a cold fury unlike his usual calculated anger. "Listen carefully, Richard. I built Blackwood Investments from nothing. I've weathered recessions, market crashes, and attempted coups from ambitious subordinates with far more talent than you. If you want to challenge me, do it openly. But if you ever again imply anything inappropriate about my relationship with this child or her mother, you'll discover exactly how ruthless I can be when provoked." Silence followed, then a carefully modulated response. "The meeting stands at 2 p.m., James. I'm merely the messenger." The call ended. James took a moment to compose himself before returning to Lily, who was still talking softly to her unconscious mother. He waited until she had finished before gently suggesting they step out to let Sarah rest. In the hallway, James knelt to eye level with Lily. "I need to attend a business meeting this afternoon. It will be virtual, but I'll need a quiet space. Would you be okay staying with one of the nurses for a while?" Lily nodded. "Is it about your company? The one with your name on that big building we passed yesterday?" "Yes, Blackwood Investments." "Are you in trouble because you're helping us?" Her perception surprised him. "No," he assured her, though it wasn't entirely truthful. "Just routine business that can't wait. My mom says rich people are always busy making more money even when they already have enough." James couldn't help a small smile. "Your mother might be right about that. But today, I'm busy making sure I keep the money I have so I can help you and your mother." This seemed to satisfy her. As they walked back toward the family room, James made another call, this one to Stockholm, Sweden, to a man he had once helped navigate a difficult financial situation. Lars Norberg, CEO of Norberg Pharmaceuticals, Bauhaus, answered on the second ring. "James Blackwood, it's been, what, 5 years? Still dominating Wall Street, I presume?" "Lars, I need a favor." The conversation was brief but productive. The Stellaris protocol medication would be on a private jet to New York within hours, accompanied by one of Norberg's top researchers to oversee its administration. The legal complications would be handled through a compassionate use exception, with James assuming all liability. Next, he called his attorney, who had already prepared the temporary guardianship papers. Child Protective Services had scheduled their home evaluation for the following morning. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Except for the board meeting. James knew what awaited him. Morris had been cultivating allies for years, waiting for an opportunity to strike. James's unexplained absence, combined with his unusual behavior regarding Lily and Sarah, provided the perfect pretext for a challenge. Under normal circumstances, James would have crushed such an attempt without mercy or hesitation. But these weren't normal circumstances. For the first time in his career, James found himself with divided priorities. The realization was both unsettling and strangely liberating. At precisely 2 p.m., James connected to the board meeting from a private office the hospital had provided. On his tablet screen, 14 faces appeared in neat boxes, the most powerful members of Blackwood Investments' board of directors. Men and women who controlled billions in assets and who had, until now, deferred to James's leadership without question. "Gentlemen, ladies," he greeted them with his customary authority, "I understand there are concerns about the Singapore acquisition. Let me assure you everything is proceeding as planned." Richard Morris's voice cut in. "I believe, James, the concerns extend beyond Singapore. Your unexpected absence has raised questions about leadership stability." James kept his expression neutral. "I'm dealing with a personal matter that requires my attention for a few days. The company is well equipped to function during brief absences of any single executive, including me. That's why we have a management structure." An older board member, Walter Bennett, spoke next. Walter had known James for 30 years, had been one of his first investors. "James, we've received disturbing reports about your involvement with a child from a questionable background. Given the company's public profile, we need to understand the situation." "I'm temporarily helping a family in medical crisis," James replied evenly. "The child's mother is critically ill. There's nothing more to it than that." Another board member leaned forward. "Sources indicate you've applied for temporary guardianship of a minor with a record of petty theft. Is this accurate?" Morris had been busy indeed. James felt cold anger rising but kept it from his voice. "I've provided temporary shelter for a child whose only parent is in intensive care. Any responsible adult would do the same." "With respect," Morris interjected, "most responsible adults would contact proper authorities rather than personally intervene in a situation involving a troubled minor. Your judgment appears compromised." The implication hung in the air. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. James recognized the strategy. Morris was attempting to create doubt, to suggest James was acting irrationally, perhaps even inappropriately. "My judgment is perfectly sound," James stated firmly. "This situation has no impact on company operations or strategy. Now, if we could return to actual business matters—" "I'm afraid it's not that simple," Morris interrupted. "The Japanese consortium has expressed serious reservations about proceeding without your full attention. The Singapore deal is at risk. Billions in potential revenue hang in the balance while you play social worker." When James felt something shift inside him, not the cold calculation of business, but something hotter and more personal. "Let me be clear. I built this company from nothing. I've multiplied your investments beyond your wildest expectations for decades. If my judgment is suddenly in question because I've chosen to help a child in crisis, then perhaps it's time to reevaluate what this company stands for." Silence fell across the virtual meeting. No one had ever heard James Blackwood speak with such emotion. "The Singapore acquisition will proceed," he continued, his voice level again. "The Japanese investors will be satisfied, and I will continue to lead this company with the same acumen I always have. But I will also help this family because it's the right thing to do. If anyone at this table has a problem with that basic human decency, I suggest you reconsider your position, both morally and professionally." Walter Bennett cleared his throat. "No one is questioning your leadership record, James, but your sudden involvement with this situation seems uncharacteristic. We're merely concerned." "Concerned about what, Walter? That I've finally remembered there's a world beyond quarterly reports? That I've chosen to use some of my considerable resources to help someone who needs it?" James paused, then added more softly, "My brother Michael died 2 days ago, the last of my family. Perhaps that's provided some perspective." Expressions of sympathy rippled through the grid of faces. Even Morris had the decency to look momentarily abashed. "I wasn't aware." Walter said quietly. My condolences. Thank you, James acknowledged. Now, I have prepared a complete overview of the Singapore situation. He shared his screen, displaying a comprehensive analysis. As you can see, everything is proceeding according to plan. For the next 45 minutes, James led the board through a detailed presentation, demonstrating his complete command of every aspect of the business. By the end, the concern had largely dissipated, replaced by the familiar confidence in his leadership. Morris sat in simmering silence, his attempted coup diffused. As the meeting concluded, Walter Bennett remained on the line after others had disconnected. James, the older man said, off the record, are you all right? This behavior, it's not like you. James considered the question. I'm fine, Walter. Better than I've been in a long time, perhaps. This child, this family, what is it about them? James hadn't fully examined his own motivations, but he found himself answering honestly. The girl reminds me of myself at that age, alone, fighting impossible odds. Except I had Michael to save me. She has no one. Walter nodded slowly. I remember that hungry young man who walked into my office 30 years ago. All ambition and raw intelligence. He paused. Just be careful, James. Not everyone on that board shares my history with you. Some see opportunity in what they perceive as weakness. Morris has been gunning for my job for years, and now he thinks he's found an opening. Don't give him one. Walter's expression softened slightly. And James, I am truly sorry about Michael. He was a good man. After the call ended, James sat for a moment into the quiet office. Walter's warning echoed in his mind. Morris would continue to gather support, to position this unusual situation as evidence of declining judgment. In normal circumstances, James would have immediately mounted a counteroffensive, gathering his own allies, perhaps even orchestrating Morris's removal. But his priorities had shifted. The boardroom politics that had consumed his existence for decades now seemed distant and hollow compared to the immediate crisis of Lily and her mother. He found Lily in the family room with a hospital volunteer working on a puzzle. She looked up when he entered, her expression brightening. Is your business meeting over? Did you get in trouble? James smiled slightly. It's over, and no, I'm not in trouble. How's your mom? The nurse said she's stable. That means not worse, but not better yet. Lily's matter-of-fact tone belied the worry in her eyes. James nodded. Dr. Patel called while I was in my meeting. The special medicine from Sweden will arrive tonight, and they've found a heart surgeon who specializes in cases like your mother's. Lily's eyes widened. They're going to fix her heart? They're going to try. The medicine will help make her stronger for the surgery. When will she wake up? James sat beside her, choosing his words carefully. I don't know, Lily. The doctors are doing everything possible, but your mother is very sick. She nodded, absorbing this with a maturity that seemed misplaced in her young face. I know, she's been getting sicker for a long time. She tries to hide it, but I can tell. She looked down at her hands. Sometimes she can't breathe right after working. Sometimes she gets so tired she cries. But she still goes to all her jobs because we need the money. James felt something tighten in his chest. What kind of work does your mother do? She cleans offices at night, and she answers phones at a doctor's office during the day, and on weekends she helps at the nursing home. Lily's voice held pride despite the circumstances. She used to be a real nurse, but she got sick after I was born, and they wouldn't let her be a nurse anymore because she missed too much work. The injustice of it struck James anew. A qualified healthcare professional reduced to cleaning offices because illness had interrupted her career. A system designed to discard people once they became inconvenient. Your mother sounds like an extraordinary woman. Lily nodded solemnly. She is. She reads to me every night, even when she's really tired. And she helps old people at the nursing home, even though they don't pay her much. She hesitated, then added, she never lets me steal things. She got really mad the first time. But then the medicine got so expensive, and she couldn't stay awake at work. Her voice trailed off. You were trying to help her, James said gently. I'm still sorry I took your wallet, Lily said, meeting his eyes directly. Mom always says wrong things are still wrong, even when you're doing them for good reasons. Your mother is right about that, James acknowledged. But sometimes life is more complicated than right and wrong. Sometimes good people make desperate choices when the system fails them. A knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Patel entered, accompanied by a blonde woman in her 40s wearing a lab coat and carrying a small refrigerated case. James, this is Dr. Ingrid Lundgren from Norberg Pharmaceuticals. She's brought the Stellaris medication and will oversee its administration. Dr. Lundgren stepped forward, shaking James's hand. Mr. Blackwood, Lars sends his regards and his personal guarantee of the efficacy of the protocol. Her accent was faintly Scandinavian despite flawless English. Thank you for coming so quickly, James replied. He turned to Lily explaining, Dr. Lundgren has brought the special medicine for your mother. Lily stood, approaching the doctor with solemn intensity. Will it make her better? Dr. Lundgren knelt to the child's level, her professional demeanor softening. It will help her heart become stronger. It's not a miracle, little one, but it gives your mother a fighting chance she didn't have before. This seemed to satisfy Lily, who nodded seriously. When will she get it? Right away, Dr. Patel answered. We've already prepared everything. Would you like to be there when we administer the first dose? Lily nodded vigorously, and the small group made their way to the ICU. Sarah Reynolds lay as before, surrounded by machines, her chest rising and falling with mechanical precision as the ventilator breathed for her. Dr. Lundgren carefully removed a vial of clear liquid from the refrigerated case, explaining the procedure to Dr. Patel and his team. James stood back with Lily, a hand resting lightly on her shoulder as they watched the doctor's work. The Stellaris protocol works by regenerating damaged cardiac tissue, Dr. Lundgren explained as she prepared the medication. Initial results from our trials show a 72% improvement rate in patients with severe heart failure. The medication was administered directly into Sarah's IV line. Nothing visibly changed, no dramatic improvement, no sudden awakening. Just the steady beep of the monitors continuing their electronic vigil. Now we wait, Dr. Patel said. We'll monitor her cardiac function hourly to track any changes. If we see improvement, we'll begin preparing for surgical intervention. Lily's face fell at the anticlimax. James squeezed her shoulder gently. Medicine takes time to work, Lily. This is just the first step. They returned to the family room where a hospital social worker was waiting to speak with Lily about her mother's condition and to assess her understanding of the situation. James stepped into the hallway to give them privacy, using the opportunity to check his messages. A text from Helen confirmed that the penthouse was ready for Lily's arrival and that the home evaluation was scheduled for 10 a.m. the following morning. His attorney had filed all necessary paperwork for temporary guardianship. The Japanese investors had been personally contacted and reassured. Everything was proceeding according to plan, except for one critical factor. Sarah Reynolds' health continued to hang by a thread. His phone rang, a number he didn't recognize. Blackwood, he answered. Mr. Blackwood, this is Detective Rivera with the NYPD. The voice was professional, neither friendly nor hostile. I'm following up on the incident involving Lily Reynolds. I understand you have applied for temporary guardianship? James tensed slightly. That's correct. Her mother is critically ill, and she has no other family. So I've been told. However, there are some concerns. Lily has a history of petty theft, 3 reported incidents in the past 6 months. And you're a man of significant means who suddenly takes an interest in this child and after she steals from you. It's an unusual situation. The implication was clear, and it ignited a cold fury in James. Detective, I understand you're doing your job. But if you're suggesting anything inappropriate, you're making a serious error in judgment. I'm merely noting that the circumstances are unusual, Mr. Blackwood. Child Protective Services has approved temporary placement pending their evaluation, but the department maintains an interest in Lily's welfare. As do I, James replied firmly, which is why I'm ensuring she receives proper care rather than being shuffled through an overloaded system while her mother fights for her life. The detective seemed to consider this. We'll be monitoring the situation, Mr. Blackwood. Nothing personal, just procedure when a child with Lily's history is involved. After ending the call, James leaned against the wall, suddenly weary. The world seemed determined to view his actions through the most cynical lens possible. Colleagues questioning his judgment, police insinuating impropriety, everyone searching for hidden motives. Perhaps they were right to be suspicious. People like him didn't typically intervene in situations like this. Men in his position made charitable donations, attended fundraisers, perhaps sat on the boards of foundations. They didn't personally involve themselves in the messy, complicated lives of struggling families. Yet here he was, fighting for a child he barely knew and her mother he had never spoken to. The question Detective Rivera had obliquely raised nagged at him. Why? What had compelled him to upend his carefully ordered existence for strangers? The social worker emerged from the family room, nodding professionally to James. Lily is a remarkably resilient child, Mr. Blackwood. She understands her mother's condition quite well, perhaps better than we would wish for someone her age. She speaks very highly of you. Thank you for your time, James replied. Is there anything specific I should be aware of regarding her emotional needs during this crisis? The social worker seemed momentarily surprised by the question. Consistency is key. Children in crisis need routine and clear expectations. Be honest about her mother's condition, but maintain hope. And perhaps most importantly, make sure she knows this isn't her fault. Children often internalize responsibility for parental illness or absence, James nodded, filing away this information. I'll do my best. When he returned to the family room, Lily was sitting on the windowsill, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. The afternoon sun caught in her hair, illuminating strands of copper among the brown. She looked painfully small against the backdrop of the towering city. The social worker seemed nice, James commented, joining her at the window. Lily nodded. She asked a lot of questions about Mom and about you. What did you tell her about me? Lily turned to face him, her expression serious. I told her you're helping us even though you don't have to, and that you didn't call the police when I stole your wallet. She paused. She asked if you ever made me feel uncomfortable or scared. I said no. James felt both relief and anger that such questions had been necessary. That's good, because I never would. I know. The simplicity of her trust humbled him. A nurse appeared at the door. Mr. Blackwood, Dr. Patel would like to speak with you. He's in Ms. Reynolds' room. James's heart quickened. He turned to Lily. Stay here. I'll come right back. Is it about Mom? I want to come too. Let me speak with Dr. Patel first, he said gently. Then I'll come get you, I promise. He found Dr. Patel and Dr. Lundgren studying a monitor displaying Sarah's cardiac readings. Their expressions were cautiously optimistic. We're seeing early response, Dr. Lundgren said without preamble. The left ventricular ejection fraction has improved by 3% in just 2 hours. It's a modest gain, but significant considering the severity of her condition. And that's good? James asked. It's very promising, Dr. Patel confirmed. The Stellaris protocol appears to be having the desired effect. If this trend continues, we could consider surgical intervention within 24 to 48 hours. But, James sensed the unspoken reservation. Dr. Patel sighed, but we're still facing significant challenges. Even with the medication, her heart is severely compromised. The surgery carries substantial risks, and finding a donor heart on such short notice. I thought we were repairing her heart, not replacing it, James said, tension edging his voice. Ideally, yes, but the damage may be too extensive for repair alone. We're exploring all options, including mechanical assist devices as a bridge solution. James processed this information with the rapid assessment that had served him in business. What's our best-case scenario? If the medication continues to strengthen her heart, and if the surgery is successful, she could potentially recover significant cardiac function, Dr. Lundgren said. Not normal, but perhaps enough to resume a relatively normal life with proper management. In worst case, the doctors exchanged glances. Dr. Patel spoke gently. James, you need to prepare Lily for the possibility that her mother may not survive this, despite our best efforts. The words hit with physical force. James had been so focused on solving the problem, getting the medication, arranging the surgery, clearing obstacles, that he had not fully confronted the possibility of failure. Not just medical failure, but his failure to save this family that had somehow become his responsibility. What are the odds? He asked, his voice steady despite the turmoil beneath. With standard treatment, less than 20% survival rate at this point, Dr. Lundgren answered honestly. With the Stellaris protocol and optimal surgical intervention, perhaps 50 to 60%. Better, but still precarious. James nodded, absorbing this reality. Thank you for your honesty. Please continue the treatment. Spare no resource, no option, no possibility. He paused. I should tell Lily about the improvement, however modest. He returned to the family room where Lily waited with barely contained anxiety. When he explained the doctor's cautious optimism, her face lit with hope. So the special medicine is working? She's getting better? It's helping, James said carefully. Her heart is a little stronger now than it was before. That's a good first step. Lily threw her arms around his waist in a spontaneous hug that caught him off guard. After a moment's hesitation, he placed a hand on her back, returning the embrace awkwardly. Can I see her? Lily asked, looking up at him. Of course. They returned to the ICU, where Sarah remained unchanged to the naked eye, though the monitors told a different story. Lily approached her mother with renewed hope, speaking to her in an urgent whisper. The medicine is working, Mom. You're getting stronger. Mr. Blackwood got it from all the way in Sweden just for you, so you have to keep fighting, okay? You can't give up. James watched from the doorway, struck by the child's fierce determination. In that moment, he made a silent promise, not just to help them through this crisis, but to ensure that whether Sarah survived or not, Lily would never again have to worry about money for medicine or food or shelter. The afternoon stretched into evening. James arranged for dinner to be brought to the family room, though neither he nor Lily had much appetite. They took turns visiting Sarah, whose condition remained stable, not dramatically improved, but not deteriorating either. As night fell, Dr. Patel suggested they return to James's penthouse for proper rest. There's nothing more to be done tonight. We'll continue monitoring and administering the protocol. If anything changes, we'll call immediately. Lily was reluctant to leave, but exhaustion was evident in the shadows beneath her eyes. James gently convinced her that they both needed sleep in real beds, promising they would return first thing in the morning. The drive to the Upper East Side was quiet. Lily pressed against the window of the town car, watching the city transform from the medical district to the affluent residential neighborhoods. The contrast between this world and the one she had left just 24 hours ago could not have been more stark. James's building stood like a gleaming sentinel, its glass and steel facade reflecting the city lights. The doorman greeted him by name, professionally concealing any surprise at seeing him accompanied by a small child. The private elevator whisked them directly to the penthouse floor. The doors opened onto a foyer larger than Sarah and Lily's entire apartment. Italian marble floors, museum-quality art on the walls, soaring ceilings with crystal chandeliers. A wall of windows revealed a panoramic view of Manhattan at night, the city transformed into a tapestry of lights. Lily stood frozen in the elevator doorway, overwhelmed by the opulence. James realized how intimidating his home must appear to her. It's very big, she said finally, her voice small in the vast space. Too big, probably, James admitted. I rarely use most of it. Helen appeared from the kitchen area, her efficiency somehow comforting in the sterile perfection of the penthouse. Good evening, Mr. Blackwood. Miss Reynolds. She smiled warmly at Lily. I've prepared a room for you. Would you like to see it? Lily nodded, still clutching her new backpack like a shield. Helen led them down a hallway to the guest wing. The blue room had been transformed, still elegant, but with touches that made it more welcoming to a child. Books on the shelves, a stuffed bear on the bed, a small desk with art supplies. I hope it's suitable, Helen said. The bathroom is through that door, with everything you might need. Lily approached the bed cautiously, touching the soft duvet with hesitant fingers. This is all for me? All for you, James confirmed. Helen has prepared dinner if you're hungry, and there are pajamas in the dresser. After a light meal that neither of them ate much of, James showed Lily around the penthouse, the living areas, the kitchen, his home office. He provided his phone number, writing it on a notepad by her bed. If you need anything during the night, you can call this number. It will ring on my phone even if I'm sleeping. Lily nodded, looking small in the large guest room. What if the hospital calls about Mom? They have my number, and I've told them to call no matter what time it is. I promise I'll wake you immediately if there's any news. As Lily prepared for bed, James retreated to his office, For the first time in 24 hours, he allowed himself to fully process the whirlwind of events that had transformed his life. His brother was dead. The last connection to his past, to the person he had been before wealth and power defined him. His position at Blackwood Investments, the company he had built from nothing, was under threat from ambitious subordinates who sensed weakness, and he had assumed a responsibility for a child he barely knew, fighting a system designed to separate them, while her mother lay near death despite his best efforts to save her. Any one of these challenges would have consumed his attention under normal circumstances. Together, they created a perfect storm that threatened the foundations of his carefully controlled existence. Yet strangely, he felt more alive than he had in years. The corporate machinations that had once consumed him now seemed hollow compared to the immediate crisis of Lily and Sarah. The wealth that had defined his identity now served a purpose beyond accumulation and display. A soft knock at his office door pulled him from his thoughts. Lily stood in the doorway, wearing new pajamas, her hair damp from the shower. "I can't sleep," she said simply. "The room is too quiet, and I keep thinking about Mom." James nodded, understanding. "Would you like some warm milk? Helen says it helps with sleep." Lily shook her head. Would you mind reading to me? Mom always reads when I can't sleep." The request caught him off guard. When was the last time he had read to a child? Had he ever? Yet he found himself nodding. "Of course. Did you find a book you like in your room?" Lily held up a copy of The Secret Garden that Helen had thoughtfully provided. They returned to her room where Lily climbed into bed, arranging the covers around herself with the serious attention children sometimes give to small rituals. James sat in the armchair beside the bed, opened the book, and began to read. The story of Mary Lennox, orphaned, alone, discovering a hidden place of beauty and healing, seemed painfully appropriate. After 3 chapters, Lily's eyes had grown heavy. James closed the book, placing it on the nightstand. "We can continue tomorrow." "Thank you," Lily murmured, already half asleep. "Mom would like you. She says people with money usually forget what it's like not to have any. But you didn't forget, did you?" The simple observation struck deeper than any boardroom challenge. "No," James said softly, "I haven't forgotten." As Lily drifted to sleep, James remained in the chair, watching over her, a self-appointed guardian to a child fate had placed in his path. Outside the penthouse windows, Manhattan continued its restless pulse. The city that had built him and broken him and somehow brought him to this unexpected moment of purpose. Tomorrow would bring the home evaluation, the continued medical battle, the corporate wolves circling his position. But tonight, in the quiet of a room prepared for a child he hadn't known 3 days ago, James Blackwood found himself experiencing an unfamiliar sensation. Peace. Morning light filtered through floor-to-ceiling windows, painting the penthouse in pale gold. James stood at the kitchen island, reviewing hospital updates on his tablet while Helen prepared breakfast. He had slept little, his mind consumed with contingency plans and worst-case scenarios. A small sound made him look up. Lily stood in the doorway, still in her pajamas, hair tousled from sleep, eyes immediately seeking his. "Any news about Mom?" Her voice was small but steady. James set down his tablet. "Dr. Patel called an hour ago. The medication continues to help. Your mother's heart is showing improvement." Relief washed over Lily's face. "So she's going to be okay?" "She's stronger than she was yesterday," James said carefully. "That's a good sign, but she still needs more treatment." Lily nodded, accepting his measured response. She climbed onto a stool at the island as Helen placed a glass of orange juice before her. "Good morning, Miss Reynolds," Helen said warmly. "Would you prefer pancakes or eggs for breakfast?" Lily's eyes widened at being offered a choice. "Pancakes, please, if it's not too much trouble." "No trouble at all," Helen assured her, turning to the stove where batter was already prepared. James watched their interaction, struck by how quickly Helen had adapted to having a child in the household. Her efficiency remained, but there was a softness to her manner that he rarely witnessed. "The Child Protective Services evaluation is at 10, James reminded Lily. "A social worker named Mrs. Chen will visit to make sure this is a suitable place for you to stay while your mother recovers." What if they don't think it's okay? Worry creased her young brow. "They will," James assured her. "This home has everything you need, and I've arranged for a tutor to continue your schoolwork while you're here. Lily looked down at her juice. At my old school, I was already behind. I missed a lot of days when Mom was too sick to take me. James made a mental note to address her education more comprehensively once the immediate crisis passed. The tutor will help you catch up. For now, let's focus on today's visit and your mother's treatment. After breakfast, Lily dressed in some of her new clothes while James reviewed documents his attorney had prepared. The temporary guardianship papers required a judge's signature, but his legal team had expedited the process using connections that ordinary people couldn't access. At precisely 10 o'clock, the doorman announced Mrs. Chen's arrival. The social worker who stepped from the elevator was younger than James had expected, perhaps in her mid-30s, with a practical bob and eyes that missed nothing as they swept the penthouse. "Mr. Blackwood," she said, shaking his hand firmly, "I'm Grace Chen from Child Protective Services. Thank you for making time for this evaluation." "Of course," James replied, gesturing toward the living area. "Lily is in the kitchen finishing breakfast. Would you like coffee before we begin?" Mrs. Chen declined with a polite smile, setting her briefcase on the coffee table and removing a tablet. "I'd like to start by understanding the circumstances that led to this arrangement." James explained the situation concisely. The theft, his discovery of Sarah's condition, the hospitalization, and his decision to provide temporary care for Lily. He omitted certain details, such as his brother's death, focusing instead on the practical aspects of the arrangement. "And you had no prior relationship with the Reynolds family?" Mrs. Chen asked, making notes. "None," James confirmed, "but when I saw their situation, I felt compelled to help." Something in her expression suggested skepticism. "It's quite unusual for someone in your position to become personally involved in such a case, Mr. Blackwood. Most people would have contacted authorities and perhaps made a donation to help with medical expenses." James met her gaze directly. "I'm not most people, Mrs. Chen, and having Lily placed in emergency foster care while her mother fought for her life seemed unnecessarily traumatic." Mrs. Chen nodded, neither agreeing nor disagreeing. "I'd like to speak with Lily now, if that's possible." "Alone." James called for Lily, who entered the living room with visible apprehension. He introduced her to Mrs. Chen, explaining that they needed to talk privately while he stepped out. "It's standard procedure," Mrs. Chen assured Lily with a warm smile. "Nothing to worry about." James retreated to his office, leaving the door ajar. He could see them but couldn't hear their conversation. Lily sat across from Mrs. Chen, her posture stiff at first, then gradually relaxing as they spoke. After 20 minutes, the social worker gestured for James to rejoin them. "Lily has given me a very positive account of your arrangement," Mrs. Chen said. "Now I'd like to see the accommodations you've prepared for her, if you don't mind." James led her through the penthouse, showing her Lily's room, the adjoining bathroom, the study area Helen had organized with age-appropriate books and supplies. Mrs. Chen took photos and made notes, asking occasional questions about daily routines and emergency procedures. "And what are your work commitments, Mr. Blackwood?" she asked as they returned to the living area. "Lily mentioned you run a large company." "I've adjusted my schedule to work primarily from home during this period," James explained. "When I do need to go to the office, Helen will remain with Lily, and I've arranged for a qualified tutor to continue her education." Mrs. Chen nodded, making final notes. "Everything appears to be in order, Mr. Blackwood. Your home certainly meets all physical requirements for temporary placement. I'll file my report recommending approval of the temporary guardianship, pending the judge's signature." Relief washed over James. One obstacle cleared. "However," Mrs. Chen continued, her tone shifting slightly, "I must emphasize that our priority remains family reunification. If Ms. Reynolds recovers, as we all hope she will, custody will revert to her immediately." "Of course," James agreed. "That's what we all want." Mrs. Chen studied him for a moment. "In my experience, even temporary arrangements can create attachments. Children adapt quickly, especially to environments that offer stability and comfort they may not have experienced before." James understood her unspoken warning. "Don't get too attached. Don't expect this to be permanent. Don't mistake wealth for right of possession." "I have no intention of separating Lily from her mother," he assured her. "My only goal is to help them through this crisis." The social worker seemed satisfied with his response. "I'll be checking in regularly, Mr. Blackwood. And if Ms. Reynolds' condition changes significantly, for better or worse, please notify my office immediately. After Mrs. Yems's Chen departed, Lily approached James with anxious eyes. Did I do okay? Can I stay here? James nodded, smiling slightly. You did perfectly. Mrs. Chen is recommending approval. Lily's shoulders relaxed. She asked a lot of questions about you, and about and about how I feel living here. What did you tell her? The truth, Lily said simply, that you're helping us and that your house is really nice but really big, and that I miss Mom, but I know she's getting the best doctors because of you. Her candor touched something in James. In the ruthless world he had inhabited for decades, straightforward honesty was rare. Childlike directness, even rarer. We should get ready to visit your mother, he said, checking his watch. Dr. Patel will be evaluating her for surgery this morning. During the car ride to Manhattan Memorial, James received a call from Richard Morris. He considered ignoring it, but the board meeting had only temporarily diffused the situation, not resolved it. What is it, Richard? He answered tersely. The Singapore deal is closing today, Morris replied. The Japanese consortium is insisting on your personal signature on the final documents. Electronic won't suffice. James had anticipated this. Morris was forcing a choice. Return to the office or risk the deal collapsing. Have the documents brought to Manhattan Memorial at noon, James instructed. I'll sign them there. The investors won't like. Then they can find another partner for their expansion, James interrupted. Noon, the hospital. That's my offer. He ended the call before Morris could protest further. Beside him, Lily watched with curious eyes. Is your business in trouble because you're helping us? She asked perceptively. James considered how to answer. Not in trouble exactly, but there are people who think I should be focusing only on making money, not on helping your mother. Lily nodded sagely. Mom says rich people spend all their time worrying about getting richer instead of using their money to help people who need it. Your mother is a wise woman, James acknowledged, and she's not entirely wrong. At the hospital, they found Dr. Patel and Dr. Lundgren in Sarah's room studying cardiac readouts. The atmosphere felt cautiously optimistic. The Stellaris protocol is exceeding expectations, Dr. Lundgren reported. Cardiac function has improved 12% in 24 hours. It's not unprecedented in our trials, but it's at the upper range of response. So we can proceed with surgery? James asked. Dr. Patel nodded. I've scheduled it for tomorrow morning. Dr. Winters from Harvard Medical is flying in tonight. He pioneered a technique for mitral valve repair that would be ideal for Sarah's condition. Lily moved to her mother's bedside, taking her hand carefully around the IV lines. Mom, can you hear me? They're going to fix your heart tomorrow. You just need to stay strong until then. James watched the one-sided interaction, struck by Lily's unwavering faith in her mother's recovery. Despite everything she had experienced, poverty, illness, uncertainty, she maintained a resilient hope that humbled him. Mr. Blackwood? A nurse appeared at the door. There are some gentlemen here to see you. They say they have documents that require your signature. James glanced at his watch. Noon exactly. Morris had followed instructions at least. I'll be right there. He found 3 men waiting in a small conference room. Morris, looking smugly inconvenienced, and 2 Japanese businessmen whose expressions suggested they were not accustomed to accommodating others' schedules. Gentlemen, James greeted them with practiced cordiality. I appreciate your flexibility. The older Japanese investor, Mr. Tanaka, bowed slightly. We are told there is a medical emergency, Mr. Blackwood. Nothing serious, I hope? Not in my family, James replied honestly. But I'm temporarily responsible for a child whose mother is critically ill. Morris intervened smoothly. The documents are prepared, James. The consortium requires your signature on pages 3, 17, and 22. James reviewed the documents with the same meticulous attention he would have given them in his office. The Singapore acquisition represented billions in potential revenue, ordinarily his sole focus. Now it seemed secondary to the drama unfolding in the ICU. He signed where indicated, then addressed Mr. Tanaka directly. Your investment is secure. Blackwood Investments will deliver the projected returns on schedule. Mr. Tanaka studied him thoughtfully. Family obligations are sacred, Mr. Blackwood, even temporary ones. We understand your priorities. The subtle rebuke to Morris's obvious impatience was not lost on James. He had underestimated the older investor's perceptiveness. As the businessmen prepared to leave, Morris lingered behind. This little humanitarian project of yours is creating unnecessary complications, James. The board remains concerned. The board's concerns were addressed yesterday, James replied coolly. The Singapore deal is now closed. What other complications concern you? Morris's expression hardened. The Japanese may respect your sudden interest in playing social worker, but our American investors are less sentimental. Walter Bennett called this morning. There's talk of another emergency meeting next week. To discuss what exactly? Your fitness to continue as CEO. Morris didn't bother concealing his satisfaction. Some feel your judgment may be compromised. James felt cold anger rising, but kept his voice measured. My judgment is perfectly sound, Richard, as evidenced by the fact that I recognize your transparent attempt to use this situation to advance your own ambitions. Morris shrugged, unrepentant. The board makes its own decisions. I merely provide information. Like the information you've been selectively sharing about my involvement with Lily and her mother? James stepped closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous quietness. Be careful, Richard. You're playing a game you don't fully understand. It's you who doesn't understand, James. Morris matched his tone. The world is watching. Questions are being asked. Why would James Blackwood, notorious for his ruthless business practices, suddenly develop such personal interest in a woman and child he's never met? People have imaginations. The implication ignited fury in James, but decades of boardroom battles had taught him to channel anger into strategic precision rather than wasteful displays. Listen carefully, he said, each word measured. I've tolerated your ambition, Richard, even admired your persistence. But if you attempt to smear my reputation or suggest anything inappropriate about my relationship with Lily or her mother, I will destroy you. Not just professionally, completely. Morris maintained his composure, but a flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. Empty threats, James. The board will evaluate the facts. Then make sure they have all the facts, James countered, including your offshore accounts in the Caymans, the ones you believe are untraceable, the ones where commission payments from the Seoul acquisition were diverted last year. Morris paled slightly. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you do. James stepped back. I built Blackwood Investments from nothing, Richard. Do you really believe I don't monitor every significant financial movement within my company? That I don't maintain safeguards against ambitious executives who might be tempted to leverage their positions for personal gain? The confrontation was interrupted by a soft knock. Lily stood in the doorway, her expression anxious. Mr. Blackwood, Dr. Patel wants to talk to you about Mom's surgery tomorrow. James immediately shifted his attention away from Morris. I'll be right there, Lily. Morris recovered his composure, smiling insincerely at the child. Hello there, you must be Lily. I'm Richard Morris, a colleague of Mr. Blackwood's. Lily regarded him with the frank assessment children often give to adults. Are you one of the people who thinks he shouldn't be helping us? The directness of her question caught Morris off guard. Business is complicated, young lady. Adults sometimes disagree about priorities. Mom says when someone doesn't answer a question, it usually means the answer is yes, but they don't want to admit it. Lily's tone was matter-of-fact, without malice. James suppressed a smile at Morris's discomfort. We need to speak with Dr. Patel now, Richard. I trust you can find your way out. As they walked back to Sarah's room, Lily looked up at James. That man doesn't like me. It's not about you, James assured her. Richard doesn't like anything that interferes with his ambitions. Is helping us interfering with your business? James considered the question. In some ways, yes, but businesses come and go. People matter more. Lily seemed to accept this, though James suspected she didn't fully understand the professional risk he was taking. In truth, he was only beginning to understand it himself. Dr. Patel was waiting with surgical consent forms and a detailed explanation of the procedure planned for the following morning. James listened carefully, asking precise questions about risks, recovery, and long-term prognosis. Even with the Stellaris protocol improving her cardiac function, this remains a high-risk procedure, Dr. Patel concluded honestly. But without it, Sarah's prognosis is extremely poor. And you've secured Dr. Winters? James confirmed. He arrives this evening. His technique offers the best chance for meaningful recovery. James nodded, signing the consent forms as Sarah's temporary medical proxy. What time tomorrow? 7 a.m. We'll begin pre-operative procedures at 5. Dr. Patel turned to Lily. Your mother is very strong to have responded so well to the medication. That gives us hope for a good outcome tomorrow. Lily nodded solemnly. Can I stay with her tonight? Before the surgery? Dr. Patel glanced at James, then back to Lily. Hospital policy normally restricts overnight visitors in the ICU, but given the circumstances, yes. We can arrange a recliner beside her bed. I'll stay too, James said without hesitation. They spent the afternoon in Sarah's room, Lily reading aloud from books Helen had packed, James working quietly on his tablet. Although Sarah remained unconscious, Dr. Lundgren explained that hearing familiar voices could potentially penetrate the sedation. As evening approached, James stepped into the hallway to update his attorney on the guardianship process and to speak with Walter Bennett about the board's concerns. The conversation with Walter was brief but concerning. Morris has been working overtime, James, planting doubts, suggesting your judgment is impaired by grief over Michael. He's even hinted at more inappropriate motivations for your involvement with the Reynolds family. James felt cold anger returning. And the board is listening to these insinuations? Some are, Walter admitted. Not everyone has known you as long as I have. Morris presents a compelling narrative of a powerful man experiencing some sort of midlife crisis or breakdown. What do you suggest? Walter sighed. Come back to the office, James, even for a day. Reassert your presence. Show them you're still the same formidable leader they've always followed. Don't give Morris this opening. James glanced through the doorway at Lily, who sat beside her mother, small fingers interlaced with Sarah's unresponsive hand. I can't leave them now, Walter. The surgery is tomorrow morning. Then immediately after, before Morris can call for a confidence vote. I'll consider it, James promised, ending the call. When he returned to Sarah's room, a nurse was helping Lily settle into a recliner that had been positioned beside the bed. The child's face showed exhaustion but determination. You should try to sleep, James suggested, taking the second recliner the hospital staff had provided. Tomorrow will be a long day. I'm afraid if I fall asleep, something will happen to Mom, Lily confessed in a small voice. James understood her fear. The nurses are monitoring her constantly, and I'll be right here watching too. I promise to wake you if anything changes. Lily nodded, though doubt lingered in her eyes. Will you keep reading? Like last night? James picked up The Secret Garden from the small table. They had left off with Mary discovering the hidden key to the garden. He resumed reading, his voice low and steady in the quiet room. After several chapters, Lily's eyes grew heavy. She fought sleep valiantly but eventually succumbed, her small body curled awkwardly in the recliner. James carefully adjusted a hospital blanket around her shoulders, then sat back in his own chair, watching over both mother and daughter in the dim light. Sarah Reynolds lay pale and still, sustained by machines and medication. James studied her face, seeing echoes of Lily in her features. Even in unconsciousness, there was character in her expression, determination in the set of her jaw, kindness in the lines around her eyes. Your daughter is extraordinary, he said softly, not expecting a response. She has your strength, your resilience. The monitors beeped steadily, the only reply. I don't know if you can hear me, Sarah, but I want you to know that Lily is safe, and that I'll make sure she stays that way, whether you recover or... He couldn't complete the sentence. The doctors are doing everything possible. We've brought in the best specialists, the most advanced treatments. You just need to keep fighting. James fell silent, watching the rhythmic rise and fall of Sarah's chest, controlled by the ventilator. After a while, he continued, his voice barely audible. I've spent my life accumulating wealth and power, believing they were the measures of success. Now I find myself using them for something that actually matters, and it's humbling. Your daughter stole my wallet and somehow gave me back something I didn't even realize I'd lost. The confession, spoken to an unconscious woman who would likely never remember his words, felt strangely liberating. In the sterile quiet of the ICU, with Lily sleeping nearby, James confronted truths he had long avoided. His brother's death had left him truly alone. The company that had defined his identity for decades now seemed hollow, without human connection. The wealth he had accumulated provided comfort and luxury, but not purpose or meaning. Yet in the midst of this personal reckoning, a child's need and a mother's crisis had provided unexpected direction. For the first time in years, James felt he was doing something unequivocally good, using his resources not just to generate more wealth, but to save lives that mattered. He dozed intermittently through the night, waking at each change in the monitor's rhythm or when nurses came to check vitals. Lily slept deeply, exhaustion finally overcoming her determination to keep vigil. At precisely 5 a.m., Dr. Patel arrived with the surgical team. They spoke in hushed tones, reviewing final preparations for the procedure. "It's time," Dr. Patel said gently. "We need to take her to pre-op now." James nodded, moving to wake Lily. Her eyes opened immediately at his touch, instantly alert. "They're taking your mother for the surgery now," he explained softly. "You can see her for a moment before they go." Lily hurried to her mother's side, taking Sarah's hand carefully between her own. "Mom, they're going to fix your heart now. I'll be waiting right here when you wake up. I love you." The simple declaration held more weight than flowery speeches or elaborate promises. Love, distilled to its essence. James felt something tighten in his chest as he watched the child say goodbye, uncertain if it was truly goodbye or just temporary separation. Patel approached Lily with gentle professionalism. "We'll take very good care of your mother. The surgery will last several hours. Mr. Blackwood will stay with you, and will provide updates regularly." Lily nodded, her composure remarkable for her age. As the medical team prepared to transport Sarah to the operating room, Lily stepped back beside James, her small hand finding his without conscious thought. He gave her fingers a reassuring squeeze, surprised by how natural the gesture felt. They followed the gurney to the surgical floor's waiting area, watching as Sarah disappeared through the double doors. A specialized cardiac surgery liaison introduced herself, explaining that she would provide hourly updates throughout the procedure. "The initial preparation will take about an hour," she explained kindly. "Dr. Winters will begin the actual repair work around 7 a.m. The full procedure typically takes 5 to 6 hours, but each case is unique." Lily nodded, absorbing the information with the seriousness of someone much older. "What happens after the surgery?" "Your mother will go to the cardiac recovery unit. She'll remain sedated for at least 24 hours, while her body begins healing." The liaison smiled reassuringly. "You'll be able to see her briefly once she's stabilized." As the liaison departed, Lily turned to James. 5 to 6 hours is a really long time." "Yes, it is," he agreed. "Would you like some breakfast? The hospital cafe should be open now." Lily shook her head. "I'm not hungry, but you can go if you want." "I'm not leaving you alone," James assured her. "Helen packed some books and activities in your backpack. Perhaps those will help pass the time." The waiting room was designed for comfort. Plush chairs, soft lighting, a small kitchenette with coffee and snacks. The privileges of private healthcare. James wondered how different this experience would have been for Lily without his intervention. Crowded waiting areas, minimal updates, the anxiety compounded by institutional indifference. They settled into a corner of the room, James with his tablet, Lily with a book from her backpack. The hours crawled by, marked by the liaison's regular updates. Preparation complete. Dr. Winters has begun the repair. The procedure is progressing as expected. Around 9 a.m., James received a text from Walter Bennett. "Emergency board meeting called for 1 p.m. Morris has the votes. You need to be there in person." James stared at the message, cold fury replacing the morning's anxiety. Morris had outmaneuvered him, using his absence to consolidate support. The timing was deliberate, forcing James to choose between Sarah's surgery and his company. "Is everything okay?" Lily asked, noticing his expression. James composed himself. "Just some business complications. Nothing for you to worry about." "Is it that man from yesterday, the one who doesn't like me?" Her perception continued to surprise him. "Yes, actually. He's called a meeting that I should attend, but it's during your mother's surgery." Lily considered this with serious attention. "Is the meeting important?" "It could determine whether I remain in charge of my company," James admitted, seeing no reason to shield her from the truth. Lily's eyes widened. "That's really important. You should go." I promised I'd stay with you. But I'm okay, Lily insisted. The nice liaison lady is bringing updates, and there are nurses everywhere. You helped Mom get the special medicine and the special doctor. Now you need to help yourself. The simple wisdom of her perspective caught James off guard. While he had been congratulating himself on his sacrifice, Lily was demonstrating a more mature understanding of priorities. The meeting is at 1 p.m., James explained. I could go and return before your mother's surgery is complete, but only if you are truly comfortable with that. Lily nodded with surprising conviction. Mom would want you to go. She always says we have to take care of our responsibilities. Your mother sounds like a remarkable woman, James said, not for the first time. She is, Lily agreed. That's why she's going to be okay. James arranged for a hospital child advocate to sit with Lily during his absence. The woman, a gentle-voiced volunteer named Margaret, assured him she would not leave Lily's side and would contact him immediately with any developments. I'll be back as soon as possible, he promised Lily, 2 hours at most. I'll be fine, she assured him, with a maturity beyond her years. Go save your company from that mean man. James smiled despite the gravity of the situation. I'll do my best. He departed with reluctance, the town car already waiting to rush him to Blackwood Tower. During the drive, he's made several calls, to his attorney, to Walter Bennett, to key board members whose support might still be salvaged. The picture that emerged was bleak. Morris had been extraordinarily effective in his campaign, leveraging James's absence and apparent distraction into a narrative of leadership decline. James arrived at Blackwood Tower with 10 minutes to spare, entering the building he had built with the focused intensity that had defined his career. Employees stopped mid-conversation as he strode through the lobby, his presence commanding even in a rumpled suit after a night in a hospital recliner. The executive floor hushed as he stepped from the elevator. His assistant rose from her desk, shock evident in her expression. Mr. Blackwood, we weren't expecting... The board meeting, Jennifer. Is everyone present? Yes, sir. They're assembling now in the main conference room. James nodded, proceeding directly toward the boardroom. Through the glass walls, he could see Morris holding court, gesturing emphatically to the gathered executives. The conversation stopped abruptly as James pushed open the door. Gentlemen, ladies, his voice carried the authority of a man who had built an empire. I understand there are concerns about my leadership. Let's address them directly, shall we? Morris recovered quickly from his surprise. James, we didn't expect you to attend, given your preoccupation with personal matters. My personal matters, as you call them, include ensuring a child isn't orphaned while her mother undergoes life-saving surgery. James took his place at the head of the table. Surgery that is happening right now, so I'll appreciate your brevity. Walter Bennett spoke next, his tone measured. The board has legitimate concerns, James. Your sudden disengagement from daily operations, the Singapore deal nearly collapsing, your unexplained absence. The Singapore deal closed yesterday, James interrupted. On schedule, with all projected terms intact. As for my absence, I've remained fully engaged remotely while addressing a humanitarian crisis that demanded personal attention. Morris leaned forward. With respect, James, your judgment appears compromised. First by grief over your brother's death, then by this inexplicable attachment to strangers. The board has a fiduciary responsibility to shareholders. Do not speak to me of fiduciary responsibility, Richard, James cut him off coldly. Not when your own financial activities deserve scrutiny. A tense silence fell across the room. Morris's expression hardened. If you're making accusations, James, I suggest you present evidence rather than empty insinuations. James reached into his jacket, removing a USB drive. I had hoped not to do this, Richard. I genuinely believed your ambition might be channeled productively within the company, but you forced my hand. He inserted the drive into the conference room's computer system. On the large screen appeared financial records, offshore accounts, transaction histories, communications between Morris and third parties regarding the Seoul acquisition. These records document systematic diversion of funds from the Seoul project into private accounts controlled by Mr. Morris, James explained dispassionately. Approximately $12 million over 18 months, disguised as consulting fees to shell companies. The forensic accounting is quite thorough. The board members sat in stunned silence. Morris's face drained of color. This is "This is fabricated," he stammered, "a desperate attempt to distract from your own failings." "The documentation has been verified by 3 independent auditing firms," James replied calmly. "Their signed statements are included in the file. As is the preliminary report I've prepared for the SEC, which I've refrained from filing pending this meeting." Walter Bennett recovered his voice first. "Richard, is this accurate?" Morris's silence was damning. He looked desperately around the table, finding no allies in the shocked expressions of his colleagues. "I believe this meeting was called to discuss my fitness to lead," James continued. "I suggest we reconsider the agenda." The next 30 minutes proceeded with clinical efficiency. Morris was placed on immediate administrative leave pending full investigation. The board unanimously reaffirmed their confidence in James's leadership. Arrangements were made for interim management during his limited absence while the Reynolds situation resolved. As the meeting concluded, James addressed the board one final time. "I built this company from nothing. I've steered it through recessions, market crashes, and global crises. My commitment to its success remains absolute. But I've recently been reminded that wealth and power are means, not ends. Their true value lies in how we use them." He checked his watch. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a promise to keep to a young girl whose mother's life hangs in the balance." James departed as he had arrived, with purposeful stride and unquestioned authority. The corporate crisis had been resolved with the same decisive action that had defined his career. But as the elevator descended, his thoughts returned immediately to Lily, waiting alone for news of her mother's fate. In the town car, he checked his phone. No messages from the hospital. Neither good news nor bad. The surgery would still be underway, the critical moments of heart repair and recovery yet to come. As Manhattan Memorial came into view, James felt an unfamiliar sensation. Not the cold calculation of business risk, but the warm anxiety of human connection. Somehow, in the space of a few days, the fate of this child and her mother had become entwined with his own. The future remained uncertain. Sarah might recover. She might not. The temporary guardianship might end in joyful reunion or tragic necessity. The board might again question his judgment if his involvement with the Reynolds family continued. But for the first time in decades, James Blackwood found himself making decisions based not on profit margins or strategic advantage, but on a simpler metric. What was right? What was human? What mattered? The car pulled to a stop at the hospital entrance. James stepped out, straightening his tie in a habitual gesture. Whatever awaited him inside, triumph or tragedy, beginning or end, he would face it with the same determination he had brought to every challenge in his life. But this time he would do so not alone, but with a small hand possibly clasped in his. Not for wealth or power, but for something far more valuable, the chance to make a difference in lives that mattered. The path to redemption continued, one step at a time.